Hi, folks. My name's Will McDonough, and I'm an educator at the New Canaan Country School in New Canaan, Connecticut. And I'm so delighted to have the chance today to share some thoughts with you all and connect with you all for the Emergency Home Learning Summit. In this session, you'll hear about how you can help your children transition from home life at home to school life at home. You'll also begin to learn a little bit about how you might consider providing for your students a moment to pause, a moment perhaps for your entire family to reflect, to connect with family members who aren't nearby, and to give your child an opportunity to socialize with others in a distance format. What I'm going to be talking about today is an idea. It's an idea that I saw through to fruition and that I'm inviting you to consider as well. So I'm going to get outside of these lockers. I hear students on the way. So meet me outside and we'll talk a little bit about where we go from here. When it comes down to it, teaching our own children at home is really complicated. Whether they're Zooming with their classmates or whether we are doing all the instruction, it's really hard to navigate this world where your child is at home and then they're at school, but they haven't moved spaces and they're still in a place that is very familiar. It's very easy for them to navigate and easy to be comfortable. The issue though is that transition moment. How can you change a child's mindset to get into school mode when they're at home? And today I'm going to share with you an idea that started a long time ago, about a year. In the life of a school, that feels like a long time, especially in the life of a school that is immersed in the transformation that schools have had to undergo in the last year as a result of COVID-19 and the ingenuity, the flexibility, the nimbleness, all the things that we've had to do. It often feels as though we have had to advance 10 years in the course of 6 short months in preparation for this 2020-2021 school year. But I'm here today to share with you an idea that started a year ago. It's an idea that started when I was talking with a bunch of my students. We used to take a trip with 8th graders up to the Adirondacks. And on that trip, I would invite students to join me on a morning run. But I also always enjoyed giving them a question. And on this one particular day, with this one particular group of students that you see here now, I got to ask them, what do you think a book is capable of? If we wrote a book and the goal of that book was to change the world, what book would we write? What is the ceiling for a book? I asked my students. And we had a great conversation. They had so many ideas. And I had so many questions for them. And, you know, I'm hopeful that some of them might write that book someday. But this idea was what I thought people needed. And this idea was even more deeply solidified with the arrival of COVID-19 and people being separate. And essentially, this was a book that I wrote for schools. So I'm going to share today with you the idea behind this book, and then I'll share with you what the book that I actually wrote is. One thing that you should know about the conversation I had with my students was that we all recognized that one of the things people needed, no matter where they lived, whatever culture, whatever nationality, whatever political affiliation, wherever they were around the world, people needed people. In difficult moments, in celebratory moments, and people need space, but people do need people. And we wondered, how could a book do that? How can a book help people be together? And then we started asking ourselves, well, what else do people need? And during this time of social isolation, of distancing, of being apart, we have lost many of the things we've relied on, especially in schools. We've lost the ability to read someone's face, to give a nonverbal cue, like a smile or a reassuring look, to mouth words to a student who is anxious or concerned about a test or a quiz. We've especially lost the ability to connect if we're working remotely with our students, with our colleagues. We have an inability to just encounter one another in the hallways, at the copy machine, at the water fountain, outside at recess. These are things that we don't have anymore because you can't have recess on Zoom. You can't happen upon someone and have a conversation to check in on them. So what do? Well, there's 3 things that we do in order to achieve this, in order to pause together the way we would if we were in person on a campus. The first is connection. It's inviting a way of getting to know each other more deeply. The second is reflection on things that we're grateful for. And the third is believing that we can be better. Having a growth mindset about who we are as individuals, but who we are as a community as well. And so when you build community, if you can build in time for connection, reflection, and growth, there's so much evidence, so much research being done by people devoting their lives to these sorts of things that reinforces this truth that connection, reflection, and a growth mindset are 3 things that will bring a community together. And that community doesn't just mean your students. It doesn't just mean faculty. It doesn't just mean staff. It means everyone. It means parents. It means families. It means the grown-ups at home with children. Anyone who is in a child's life is part of the school community. So this idea about building in time to pause together intentionally that then invites connection throughout the day is where this book began. Now, each school is different and each opportunity is different. And so I am not, in this conversation, attempting to sell you my book. You certainly can buy it, and I won't stop you from doing that. But I also just want to invite you into the idea of thinking about what your school community needs. If you have learners who are learning at home, thinking about what those families need. There might be students who you had last year who now are being homeschooled. And like most teachers, our former students remain our students forever. Just because they're not in our classroom anymore, just because they're growing up, going on to new and exciting things, sometimes 20 years after we have them, they forever view us as their teachers. We forever see them as our students. And so I think if we can just consider that and connect to students in these meaningful ways, that is going to make a real difference. So what I invite folks to do in this book that I wrote is I invite them to answer a question. And I intentionally designed it so that these questions would be able to be answered by a 5-year-old or a 105-year-old. I'll spoil the first one for you. The first question is, what is your favorite thing that's green? It's not particularly insightful. It's not particularly deep. But it's a question that invites connection. Most of us, no matter how well we know someone, don't know what someone's favorite green is. I gave a copy of my book to one of my colleagues, and a few days later she said that she and her grown-up child were doing it together. Each day they were answering a question. And she said, "Will, I want to tell you what my favorite green is. My favorite green is when I'm driving down the road by my house in May, and all of a sudden I look out the window and I gasp because yesterday the trees weren't green, and today here in Connecticut they are. Everything's green, and it always happens, and I always know it's going to happen, and it always takes my breath away. That's my favorite green." And I told that colleague, "Hey, I know that green. I love that green. It's not my favorite thing that's green. But every time in May when I see that, I'm going to think of you. That's now your green." Now, why does this matter in the life of a school? Well, it matters because those greens matter, those connections. It feels good to learn things about people. It feels good to be asked a question. It calms us down. Our greens aren't important, but they're part of us, and it invites us to pause together. Thing number 2 that we're invited to do each day. Each day in the book, you're invited to write something you're grateful for. Right now, I'm grateful for my voice. I'm grateful that I'm healthy enough to speak, that I can project. It's just a thing right now as I speak to you and record this video that I feel grateful for. Today, for the rest of the day, I'm gonna think about my voice. I'm gonna just be aware of it. Be aware that my voice is a thing that I possess. Not everyone has a voice, either literally or figuratively. That makes me feel good. Even with a mask on my face, I have a voice and I can share things with people. And then the third thing that you're invited to do each day, which connects to the idea of a growth mindset, is to draw a self-portrait. Now here you see my face, and now on the screen I'm going to show you a few of the self-portraits that I've done over the first few days of this book. What you'll notice is that some of the self-portraits at the beginning aren't particularly good because I was drawing the way I thought my face was supposed to look. This is the shape of a face, and this is the shape of a nose. But what I started doing on day 4 or 5 was I started taking a picture of myself and just drawing the shapes that I saw, not the face in its entirety. I just started drawing the shapes of my nose, of my beard, of my ears, of my glasses. And I started paying attention to lines, to shadows. I started looking at my face differently. I didn't realize that I had those parts of me, those creases, those patterns. And it made me pause. It surprised me. Even though I wrote this book, I underestimated what pausing each day and looking at myself and thinking about myself physically, but also just who am I? What makes me me? That's me. And so often what we'll do when a child transitions from one classroom to another or one activity to another is you'll have kind of a centering do now activity. Creating those at home is a really fundamental piece of that experience. There are a variety of ways you could do this. I'm sure there are books or websites or materials. But what I would like to invite you to do today is to think about your own children who you have in your home, who you're trying to engage. And think about what they need to pause. You could even ask them, do an interview with a child, acknowledge that these transition moments are hard. Some kids might like jokes. Some kids might like riddles. But just like Pavlov's dog, who associates a prize with a sound, just like all of us who benefit from rhythms and patterns, building those patterns in a way that says, oh, I'm going to do a riddle now, or a crossword puzzle, or I'm going to paint a picture before I begin. That will help with task initiation. That will help more than saying, okay, it's time for school now, kids. Let's come sit at the table where we sit when we do school. Right? It centers people. It helps them pause. Now, the book that I wrote is really beneficial for this. I'm certainly not trying to sell my book. Rather, I'm trying to inspire you to write your own book, create your own curriculum, your own program. Of course, if you would like to buy my book, it's available. But the point is, I wrote the book because I saw a need for it. It was the book that I wanted to exist for my students, for my family. I didn't know what it would become, but it was meaningful to me to go through that process. And it was imperfect. I'm someone who likes to do something and get it started, but it was an experience. It was fun. And it was the book that I thought we needed. Your child might need a different book. A book of daily exercises, daily questions, daily puzzles, engagements, scavenger hunts, exercises. Maybe your child is kinesthetic. We're all different in those ways. We all need different things. And that's an exciting part about this, is you can write a book. You can write a PowerPoint presentation with a slide, and each day there's an activity, there's a engaging exercise, there's a puzzle. You can do that. You are the teacher at home. Even if your child has teachers on Zoom, by just having one thing for your kid to do at home, you will be creating for them a really important experience. I know that for my students who have this book now, it's been cool for them. They too have started borrowing ideas from one another, thinking more deeply about connecting, about each other, about how they learn and how they grow. And if they have that growth mindset, and over 99 days that this book takes on, if they can draw their picture each day, that is a really cool thing. And the reason that it's 99 days is because everyone wants to get to 100. But I stop it at 99. Because if we invite our students, if we invite our community to do something, and then say, hey, now we're done, who wants to keep going? And people might not. But if we can invite our students to see that learning doesn't end at the end of a class period, our own growth doesn't end. We as humans are a process of evolving throughout the duration of our lives. And if we can pause, especially in moments of stress and strain, whether it's the political world, whether it's physical safety in our neighborhoods, in the places we inhabit, whether it's concern for people we care about, if we can pause together, we are giving ourselves the best chance of really being a community. A community that asks each other questions, that finds gratitude in little things, and that grows. Thanks so much for listening. I really look forward to all the other talks and presentations going on. And I invite you to reach out to me via Twitter, via Instagram, or via email. And I would love to connect with you. All my best. May we pause together soon.